In the future world, aliens have invaded Earth and seized their own territories from humans. These territories have become their colonies. Inside the colony in Los Angeles, USA, the provisional government remains loyal to the alien rulers. The officials of this provisional government are regarded by the people as traitors to humanity. As a result, the lives of the residents are extremely miserable and resources are severely scarce. In contrast, the upper class willingly submits to the aliens and thus enjoys resources that the poor cannot access, even having exclusive green zones where they live. Moreover, the provisional government enforces extremely harsh control policies, such as a mandatory nighttime curfew. If people do not return home within the allowed time, they will be shot down by alien drones. Furthermore, civilians are forbidden to own weapons. Anyone who violates this rule will be arrested by the government. A former FBI agent named Gwyn lives in this colony. After losing his job, he became a car mechanic. He has a beautiful wife and 2 lovely children, but few people know that Gwyn also has a youngest son. During the alien invasion, his family accidentally got separated from the youngest child. This has become a wound that never heals in their hearts. That day, as usual, Gwyn went out to work. His wife, Katie, noticed something strange about him but didn't ask much. In fact, Gwyn had a major plan that day: to escape the colony and search for his lost son. After arriving at the repair shop, he took a pile of parts and headed toward Santa Monica. On the way, he successfully passed the armed forces inspection. When he arrived, he bought a Santa Monica ID card from a black market dealer. Then he and Nikki hid inside a refrigerator, loaded onto a truck bound for the Santa Monica checkpoint. The truck passed the scanning checkpoint smoothly, but just as it was about to move on, something unexpected happened. A massive explosion destroyed the area and Gwyn, hiding inside the refrigerator, miraculously survived. However, the armed forces quickly arrived and captured him. At this time, Katie still didn't know her husband was in trouble. She went to a nursing home to secretly buy insulin. Due to the government's strict control, insulin had become a luxury item. She traded the best bottle of wine from her house for insulin from a black woman, but discovered it was poor quality. She took her wine back, drew her gun, and fled while shooting during her escape. Gwyn, imprisoned, requested to call his family, but those detained here had no human rights. Late into the night, he still hadn't returned home, leaving Katie deeply worried. Just then, her sister arrived with her son. It turned out the insulin Katie had fought for earlier was actually meant for her nephew. She promised that she would find a way to get it within the week. Then she asked her sister to take care of the children and quickly put on her coat to leave the house. She went to the home of Gwyn's corrupt coworker, but he refused to reveal Gwyn's whereabouts. At that moment, the curfew began and drones filled the sky. Luckily, Katie reacted quickly and hid under a car to escape danger. However, she witnessed the coworker being arrested by the armed forces. The next day, in desperation, she went to ask Eric for help. He advised her to check the hospital, but of course, she couldn't find her husband there. However, taking advantage of the chaos in the hospital, she managed to steal a large amount of insulin. After hearing about the explosion in Santa Monica, she called Eric again and finally confirmed that her husband had been captured. Meanwhile, Gwyn was being escorted by the armed forces to Erland's mansion. There, Gwyn witnessed firsthand the extravagant life of the upper class. Erland sought him out because he wanted to use Gwyn's former FBI status. He hoped Gwyn could help investigate the rebel group responsible for the bombing. If Gwyn agreed, he would gain access to elite-level resources. Otherwise, his family would be executed. Erland gave Gwyn some time to think it over. When Gwyn finally returned home, his family breathed a sigh of relief. After sharing an intimate moment with his wife, he told her about Erland's proposal. Katie believed working for the government would make them hated by others, but for the family's sake, Gwyn wanted to accept the offer. The couple ended the night in tension. However, the next day, Erland unexpectedly visited Gwyn's home in person. He brought along food that ordinary citizens could never obtain and promised to help Katie reopen her bar, a mix of threat and temptation. Gwyn made one final condition: that Erland help him find his missing son. Erland agreed without hesitation. Thus, Gwyn officially became a member of the government army. What he didn't expect was that the next day, Katie secretly met with members of the rebel faction. It turned out she had been secretly working for the rebels all along. And now that her husband joined the government, she decided to act as their informant within the government and temporarily report on her husband's activities. The next day, Gwyn officially started his new job and was assigned to the National Security Bureau. There he met his superior, Felix. Right at their first meeting, Felix gave Gwyn a mission: to work with a partner to track down a man who had planted a bomb in the truck. That man wasn't part of the rebels, he did it purely for money. Although unwilling, Gwyn had no choice but to follow his superior's orders. Meanwhile, Katie returned to her old abandoned bar. From the ventilation system, she retrieved their savings and some old family photos. While she was gathering her things, Eric suddenly appeared at the bar. But since her husband had just started working, Katie hadn't yet collected any useful information. At the same time, Gwyn and his team tracked down the girlfriend of the bomber. Although she insisted she hadn't seen him, Gwyn's instincts told him she was lying. He drove into a nearby alley, and sure enough, the bomber was hiding there. After an intense chase, Gwyn successfully captured him. It turned out the man had been arrested before for smuggling fuel. Gwyn's corrupt coworker was deeply disappointed to learn that Gwyn was now working for the government but to seek Felix's help, but even she had no authority to intervene. Feeling powerless, Gwyn returned to the repair shop intending to find Gine's wife and children, only to discover they were no longer there. When Katie learned about Gine's family situation, she asked Eric for help, but he couldn't do anything either. When Gwyn returned home, he was deeply moved to see Jan's wife and children safe. He made fake documents for them and took them to the slums. Although the area was chaotic and dangerous, Gwyn entrusted a trusted friend to care for them. After her husband left, Katie secretly met with Alex, the rebel leader, upon learning that Gwyn had captured Heinzer. Alex realized the situation was extremely critical because the mastermind had once been part of the rebels but had split due to differences in opinion. If these people were captured by the government, the entire rebel faction would be at risk of exposure. At the same time, the task to sabotage Gwyn's plan was assigned to Katie. Meanwhile, when Gwyn returned to the agency, he discovered Gian had been sent to the alien labor camp. He sought help from Felix but unfortunately, she was still powerless. Just before the truck carrying Gian was taken away, Gwyn ran over and managed to inform him about his wife and children. Those sent to the labor camp were stripped of their clothes and subjected to intense blinding lights. Eventually they had to put on protective suits and step into the glaring area. When he returned home, Gwyn was filled with guilt and drank cheap, sorrowful wine in the yard. Then he received a call from his teammate, learning that Heinzer had revealed the hiding place of his comrades. As soon as he left the house, Katie reported the news to Eric. Gwyn arrived to find all of Heinzer's comrades had been eliminated. It was then that he realized there was a mole within the government. The next day at the abandoned yard, a homeless man used a radio to recount the entire Santa Monica incident to the public. He called the bomb transporters heroes and urged everyone to bravely rise up against the government. By the time the military received the alert and arrived at the scene, the man had disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the resistance began a new operation, and Katie joined them. They carried weapons to block the military's truck, seized the soldiers' radios, and deliberately disclosed information. When the public rushed to seize the goods, teammate Justin was shot by drones. To protect the group, Eric shot the assailant while the others hid in a safe corner. They then calculated the timing of reinforcements and drone arrivals. It turned out it was only a drill, but witnessing the civilians and teammates being killed caused Katie immense pain. Upon returning home, she frantically scrubbed the blood off her body. Hai noticed his wife's unusual behavior and wanted to know what happened, but Katie said nothing. Meanwhile, their eldest son was held back by his teacher after class. It turned out both the boy and the teacher supported the resistance movement, and each time the boy secretly handed his teacher recorded tapes. Recently, the teacher observed the sky and discovered a mysterious object in low Earth orbit. It was clearly something the aliens were constructing. Elsewhere, Hai and his teammates arrived at the crime scene. With his experience, he recognized Justin as a member of the resistance and confirmed this was a planned robbery. He then reported this to Felix, not expecting it would affect Justin's parents. When he hurried to Justin's house, he discovered the armed forces had indiscriminately arrested Justin's parents. Although Hai felt reluctant, he could not change the outcome. Unexpectedly, Eric witnessed everything in the crowd and reported the situation to Alex. Alex believed Justin would leave no clues about the rebel faction at home. He ordered Justin to ask Katie for more information about the government's next plan. Meanwhile, Gwyn returned home and recounted the day's events to his wife. Katie tried to suppress her pain, pretended nothing had happened, and secretly went out to meet the rebels. Eric's ruthless orders at that time had made Katie dissatisfied with him, but she still had to carry out the organization's mission. Eric instructed her to find a way to gather more information about the government. Around this time, eldest son Bram, guided by his girlfriend, went to the abandoned hydroelectric station and sneaked into an underground tunnel, where he met his girlfriend's cousin. His girlfriend told Bram that the stairs above led to a new world. Instead of climbing up, with Bram's help, they safely brought Pedro home. Meanwhile, after returning to the unit, Felix found some information about Justin and asked him to follow the clues to find the rebels. That night, the two went to the abandoned stadium and unexpectedly were attacked by a mysterious figure there. Although they couldn't catch the assailant, they discovered weapons hidden at the site. Clearly, this was one of the rebel strongholds, and soon Eric and Alex also received the news. They didn't expect the government to investigate this place so quickly. Therefore, Eric confronted Katie, demanding she choose between the organization and her husband. This tore Katie's heart apart. Soon it was the grand opening of Katie's bar. Elaine personally attended to reassure the people in the quarantine area, but her presence made Katie even more anxious. She hoped her husband could use his current position to get the whole family out and start a new life. Gwyn was determined to stay and use the government to find their youngest child. Faced with this decision, Katie was helpless. At the same time, Eric also arrived at the bar and Katie told him that the government had a massive intelligence database and only Gwyn's superior knew how to operate it. If they wanted to control this intelligence source, the organization could not harm her husband. The two quickly reached an agreement. The next day, Felix met Gwyn and shared some top-secret information from the unit. She revealed that the leader of the rebels was a man named Nemo. Although Gwyn was forced to take on this mission, Felix trusted his abilities. She said that the rebels' actions could not change anything and would only bring humanity closer to extinction. Therefore, she urged him to make every effort to find Nemo. Felix easily recognized her appearance. After everyone left the house, the rebels deliberately set fire to Katie's home. After extinguishing the fire, Katie reported to the police and informed her husband. When Gwyn arrived home, the place was completely under the unit's control. They considered this an act of provocation by the rebels against the government. Soon, Agent Jenny arrived at the scene and discovered that copper pieces might be hidden inside the bomb. It was possibly some kind of message. For safety reasons, they requested Katie be taken in for questioning, but Gwyn was blocked outside because Felix only wanted to see Katie privately. At the same time, Katie's younger sister received a new job opportunity and was recruited to work in the elite green zone. Thanks to her outstanding skills, she quickly caught the attention of artist Sark Loth and was promoted from temporary staff to official security personnel. Felix conducted a series of questions with Katie, even including personal ones. These questions made Katie feel extremely uncomfortable. After leaving, she told her husband she felt uneasy and left the security site alone. Gwyn confronted Felix, asking exactly what she had asked his wife, only to find she took out a small box. Inside were propaganda tapes for the rebels, which were found in Bram's room. If these were exposed, the consequences for Bram would be severe. Luckily, Felix agreed to help Gwyn cover this up. So, when he returned home, Gwyn questioned his son about where he got the tapes and how he knew their content. Terrified, Bram confessed everything. That evening, Katie went to the new rebel base. Alex laid out a stack of photos and asked her to identify Felix, but before doing so, Katie demanded he guarantee her husband's safety. The next day, the rebel propaganda broadcaster went on air again. Gwyn's team traced the broadcast signal and quickly located the hideout. Realizing there was no escape, the broadcaster decided to stay and voluntarily surrender. Since the rebels had nearly set fire to Gwyn's house, he gave the broadcaster a severe reprimand. They thought the broadcaster was leader Nemo, but investigations showed otherwise. Soon, based on the broadcaster's testimony, they discovered where he usually obtained intelligence. Unexpectedly, it was right next to the green zone. Gwyn speculated that Nemo's hideout might be inside the green zone. After finishing work, Bram met his father to explain why he had listened to the rebel tapes. It was because Nemo had told them that the alien rule would eventually end. Therefore, he hoped his father would not focus all his attention on hunting Nemo. At this time, Felix unexpectedly appeared at the bar and met Katie. She placed photos in front of Katie showing her first actions with the rebels and demanded that she work for her. Katie had no choice but to comply. Felix, satisfied that her goal was achieved, went home. She intended to tell the story to her husband, who was paralyzed. Unexpectedly, Eric had already broken into the house and killed both her and her husband. Due to the rebel broadcast, protests increasingly escalated. Countless young people flooded the streets, posting rebel leaflets everywhere. Of course, the Security Bureau quickly noticed and deployed armed forces to arrest many protesters. Felix's departure quickly drew the unit's attention. Her associate Beau went to Gwyn's house and informed him of this news. Katie, hiding behind a wall and hearing this, was extremely frightened. Gwyn hurried to Felix's house. The living room walls were covered with writings mentioning the name Nemo. Erlen placed special importance on this because very few people in the entire colony had ranks like Felix. Yet she was killed right under the government's nose, leaving many people in fear and confusion. At that moment, Jenny received a call reporting that the unit had captured someone named Nemo. But when she arrived at the Security Bureau, she discovered it was only a young man. Threatened him that if he didn't tell the truth, he would be sent to the labor exploitation factories. Soon, based on his testimony, they tracked down a villa in the green zone. After conducting a raid, they found no one inside. Finally, Gwyn discovered a secret passage inside which two people were hiding. The place contained a large amount of intelligence documents about the rebels. Radio stations quickly reported the incident, declaring it a major victory for the government. This news caused panic among many rebel members. In fact, Erlen's actions were only intended to reassure the people and use the victory to control the situation. Afterwards, Gwyn went down to the underground interrogation room of the Security Bureau. From interrogating the rebel member, he learned that Nemo had never actually existed. The leader Nemo was just a fictional figure, used to exploit his image to influence the real rebels. Gwyn thought he had completed his mission and wanted Erlen to fulfill his promise. Unexpectedly, Erlen suddenly turned and demanded that he eliminate the entire rebel group, and because of Felix's departure, he also ordered Gwyn to take over her position. No one expected that the rebels were secretly planning an even larger campaign. Due to Erlen's orders, Gwyn decided to investigate Felix's departure. He went to Jenny suspecting she was involved, but she vehemently denied any connection. Finally, he even suspected Katie. After returning home and checking with the tutor, he learned that she had shown no unusual behavior. He went to the bar secretly to search for clues but still found nothing. Meanwhile, Bram and his girlfriend escaped the colony through the secret underground tunnel. They went to the abandoned area controlled by the aliens, stole a large amount of valuable supplies, and returned to the colony. He went to the teacher and said he could help him obtain a telescope. Then they could observe what the aliens were actually doing in space. In another development, Erlen met with his superior,
He reported
Helena.
that
Nemo was only a symbolic figure and hoped to use Nemo's name to turn the situation around. Helena didn't want to waste time with him, so after agreeing to the plan, she left immediately. Erlen returned to the security bureau and ordered the broadcaster to be brought to him. He wanted this person to impersonate Nemo, take full responsibility, and in return he would spare his life. Finally, out of fear, the broadcaster had no choice but to accept. As night fell, Gwyn still felt anxious, so he sneaked back to the bar under the cover of darkness but still found no clues. From her, he also learned that Jenny's fiancé had died in the previous explosion, fueling her deep hatred for the rebels. Not long after, the trial of Nemo officially began broadcast live by the media. Erlen acted as the judge, publicly announcing Nemo's crimes to all residents. Immediately after the trial ended, he betrayed his previous promise, showing no regard for it. He publicly executed the broadcaster and then led Gwyn to meet the mysterious figure. Meanwhile, the rebel members disguised themselves as the armed forces, ready to carry out a new plan. Gwyn on the car could not understand Erlen's actions, but politics is inherently ruthless. To maintain power and public order, such actions are deemed necessary. When the car reached the intersection, those disguised as armed forces suddenly attacked. It turned out their target was to kidnap Erlen, and the previous actions had merely been a setup for this plan. Since Gwyn was also on the car, Eric could not shoot him and could only watch as they drove away. At that moment, reinforcements and drones arrived, leaving the rebels with no choice but to retreat. At the bar, Katie anxiously called her husband, but no one answered, and then there was a knock on the door. Unexpectedly, Gwyn had brought Erlen to hide at the bar, believing this to be a coup rather than a rebel action. Out of fear, Erlen forbade Gwyn from contacting the armed forces. Finally, Gwyn decided to call the person he truly trusted. He told Erlen to hide in the main hall while he and his wife went into the office. Katie didn't understand why her husband was risking his life for Erlen. Cut long. After going outside, Gwyn decided to make a call for help, leaving Katie and Erlen behind. Because the plan had failed, the rebels had lost some of their comrades. While they were discussing the next step, Katie called to report that Erlen was hiding in bar. Just as they were waiting for the rebels to arrive, Gwyn unexpectedly returned to bar. He managed to contact reinforcements, but they would take at least 20 more minutes to arrive. Katie knew the rebels were about to arrive, and for the safety of her husband, she thought they could no longer continue hiding there. Katie, however, saw nothing to worry about, and Gwyn even asked his wife to bandage his wound. Just as the two of them stepped out of the room, unexpectedly, Erlen brought good news. He had just received word from a contact in Santa Monica that Gwyn's youngest child, Charlie, was still alive. He intended to take Gwyn to see Helena, as only she had the means to resolve Charlie's situation. Seeing Erlen speak with such certainty, Katie changed her decision. At that moment, a knock sounded at the door of bar, and Eric was standing there. Realizing the situation was dangerous, Gwyn went into hiding. Eric took the opportunity to check the basement and led Katie down below. Alex had ordered that Erlen must be captured at all costs. They might not harm Gwyn, but Erlen had to be taken away. Afterward, Eric left bar for. This action did not raise Gwyn's suspicion, but the jacket Erlen had left in the hall made him realize they would return. So he blocked the door of bar with a chair and grabbed his rifle, preparing for the imminent danger. Soon Eric and his team returned to bar, and the battle was about to erupt. Fortunately, Gwyn and Katie both remained safe. At that moment, reinforcements along with Ron arrived at bar, and hiding in a cabinet also escaped unharmed. After he left, Gwyn looked at his wife, understood everything, and realized that Katie was a member of the rebellion. He went home and told his wife the truth about Nemo's execution, instructing her to stay obediently at home and not go out on her own. As for the rebellion, because of Katie's actions that day, Alex began to suspect that she was a double agent. She had both gathered information from the rebellion and relayed the situation to Gwyn. Katie also suffered nightmares for not helping the rebellion capture Erlen. She dreamt of shooting Eric to resolve the situation, so early in the morning, she left home and went to bar. As she approached bar, she discovered that the place had been completely sealed off by the government. She went to the rebel base and found it completely deserted. Then she went to Eric's house but also found the door tightly shut. It seemed everyone had escaped. At the same time, the Security Bureau, through the data network, identified Eric's true identity within the government. Because they captured him, Erlen decided to support Gwyn unconditionally and gave them full authority to act. Soon after, the operation to capture Eric began. The armed forces surrounded his house but did not expect the enemy had already set traps. As soon as they opened the door, the special forces were blown away by a hidden bomb, killing 4 agents on the spot. This made Gwyn even more suspicious of Eric's true identity. He and Bo investigated Eric everywhere. From the accounts of Eric's 2 former teammates, they learned he had a tattoo of a winged skull. This was the symbol of the Naval Special Forces, but while they were still searching for Eric, he already had a new plan. Eric sneaked into a government-restricted area. He dealt with the guards and hid the bodies behind a truck. Jenny, inside the Security Bureau, found information related to Eric and discovered that he had never actually joined the Special Forces. Gwyn realized these documents were worthless and instructed Jenny to use facial recognition to search for information about him. Meanwhile, Eric carried the stolen body and staged a scene to make it appear as if he had died in the accident. The scene was quickly discovered by the security bureau. Bo believed it was Eric, as the failure to eliminate a member was a familiar tactic of the rebellion. With a clear mind, Gwyn realized this was just a diversion and refused to close the case so easily. Meanwhile, Katie sneaked into the bar, relying on the secret letter sent by the rebels. She knew she had to go to the designated location to meet a rebel member. When she arrived at the park, Eric drove up to pick her up and took her to a deserted square. Eric wanted to know whether Katie had truly betrayed the organization. Although Alex always believed Katie was a traitor, he still wanted to trust her. Katie was deeply disappointed by Eric's suspicion. Everything she did was for the organization, yet in the end, she was doubted. She left in frustration, and after she left, Eric secretly met Rachel. It turned out that today Alex had ordered Rachel to deal with Katie. But after today's conversation, Eric felt it might just be a misunderstanding. So in the end, both decided to trust Kate. The next day, Gwyn went to the green zone to meet Erlen. Although Jenny had used facial recognition to search for information about Eric, her access rights were insufficient. Moreover, Eric had used too many fake identities, so higher-level access from Erlen was needed. Not only that, Erlen also gave Gwyn a file, inside of which was a photo of Charlie. He confirmed that Charlie was still alive. This made Gwyn and his wife extremely happy and also gave him more motivation. The next day he went to the security bureau. Because the number of documents was so large, Jenny could not find any useful information for the time being. At that moment, Bo came to Gwyn and handed him the file, and Gwyn hurried home. It turned out they had found fingerprints related to Eric in the bar. So they assumed his wife had met Eric. Of course, Katie knew nothing, but when she heard Gwyn say that Eric had once been a government assassin and later joined the arms dealer, she was very surprised and eventually decided to admit that she had met Eric and revealed his old address. Gwyn's team quickly found Eric's real name and prepared to arrest him. At the same time, Rachel went to the bar to find Katie and said that Eric trusted no one except Katie. This made her emotions surge. Finally, she contacted Eric and informed him that Gwyn was coming to arrest him. From what could be clearly seen, those captured and imprisoned in the labor exploitation factory had to perform complex tasks. Moreover, anyone who fell ill would be cruelly executed, and Jan was gradually getting used to life there. No one knew that when he looked out of his room's window, what he actually saw was the distant earth while arresting Eric. Gwyn happened to discover a book that his wife owned at the scene. This made him even more certain of her suspiciousness, but he did not expose her. On the contrary, he informed her the news that Charlie was still alive. At the same time, Helena arrived at Erlen's office because, on the one-year anniversary of the colony's founding, the Pacific Regional Chairman would come to Los Angeles. In fact, this party was more like an evaluation event. Therefore, she requested Erlen to ensure the security of the area and prevent the situation from worsening. In another development, for the safety of the children, Katie decided to retreat. Currently, the rebel forces in Los Angeles were almost completely destroyed and no longer had a chance to win. Rachel also decided to help her so that Alex would not implicate her or her family. A mysterious call suddenly came to Gwyn's office during the security operation. On the other end was Alex, the leader of the rebels. He revealed to Gwyn that Katie had betrayed them and also arranged to meet him privately. So following the instructions from the call, Gwyn took the bus to meet Alex. He wanted to cooperate with Gwyn to capture Eric, but the condition was to ensure his own safety and allow him to leave the quarantine zone. At this time, Eric still did not know that he was about to be betrayed. Alex received information from a member that the chairman was about to arrive at the operation. Gwyn discussed the call with Bo. He worried that Alex's actions could create problems for him, but for the safety of his wife, he still decided to inform Erlen. Upon learning that the opposing party's demand was to leave the quarantine zone, Erlen realized the seriousness of the issue but had to meet in person to negotiate. He brought Eric down to meet Alex and informed him that the chairman was about to arrive. At the same time, G also handed Alex a set of documents. After returning home, Gwyn still did not reveal his wife's secret. He was only a bit frustrated and revealed to Katie that Alex had contacted them to betray Eric. Upon hearing this, Katie realized the situation was extremely dangerous, so she went to the bar and informed Eric. But G did not believe Alex would betray him. G still sought confirmation from Alex, and of course Alex was not foolish enough to reveal the truth. A few words were enough to easily dispel suspicion. Eric could not find any evidence, so he had no choice but to trust him. The next day, Gwyn brought Erlen to the location where Alex had agreed to meet and reiterated that at the appropriate time, he would lure Eric and rebel members from other colony zones outside. At that point, they could capture them all at once. In return, G would be allowed to leave the colony. Both sides reached an agreement, so the meeting day soon arrived. Eric and his group were all under Gwyn's surveillance, but they did not know that Eric had already taken precautions. She asked Katie to secretly monitor from nearby. When she saw the armed forces appear, she reported it to Eric. Realizing that the plan had been exposed, the armed forces rushed in, but still, they could not capture Eric. This made Erlen extremely angry and he decided to personally interrogate Alex. This made Gwyn fear that the truth about his wife would be revealed, so he decided to act first. He went to the temporary hideout, dealt with Alex and blamed the rebels. This incident made Erlen furious again, and he vented some of his anger on Gwyn. By evening, the captured rebel members were hung in the city center as a show of force. Katie witnessed this painful scene, but Eric also appeared there and instructed her not to act rashly for the time being. He wanted to wait for the right moment to counterattack. The government's cruel and inhumane actions enraged the public. People flooded the streets to commemorate the deceased. The armed forces arrived to suppress them but clashed with the people. Not only here but riots also broke out in other districts and numerous police officers were affected. Erlen was extremely worried about the situation. Gwyn received intelligence that the rebels had established a stronghold outside the colony. This source was extremely reliable. They suspected someone had discovered an unblocked tunnel beneath the alien wall. In fact, all this information was fabricated by Nanwan with the sole purpose of gaining higher authority. However, the waiting to hang claim turned out to be true. At the same time, the rebels were planning a major attack, so Eric took Katie to their new base. Because the chairman was about to inspect Los Angeles and was reported to travel by subway, they decided to launch the attack at MacArthur Station and then take hostages. Meanwhile, Engen used the authority Erlen provided to move freely through Los Angeles and enter the abandoned area. His plan this time was to observe the uninhabited area. After checking the surrounding areas, the two staged a ruse with the armed forces. They pretended to be rebels who had been hiding there and deliberately left false clues. Based on the signs observed on the inspection day, it seemed the rebels would act at several locations. What he did not expect was that Erlen had actually found the secret tunnel leading to the abandoned area. After learning the news, Erlen prepared to block the passage. Gwyn stopped him, believing they could use this place to ambush the rebels. That night, Katie was in the bar's basement and received special training from Eric. Since it was her first mission, Katie felt extremely anxious. Eric told her to summon all her courage to carry out the mission, just as she had protected her husband. When she stepped out of the basement, Katie was surprised to see her husband was also there. It turned out that since discovering the secret tunnel, Gwyn had devised a plan to lead his wife and children through it to escape the colony. He did not tell Katie and decided the next day to take Bo to check the tunnel route. That night, Katie prepared everything. After saying goodbye to her son and daughter, she got ready to depart. She saw her daughter reading a book about aliens, filled with brainwashing content urging humans to worship them. At that moment, Gwyn drove home. He wanted to take the whole family out of the colony, which surprised Katie greatly. Seeing that she did not want to leave, he bluntly revealed that he already knew she was a double agent. Clashed. Katie believed that everything she did was for the family. At the same time, she hated this government and hoped her husband would join her, but he thought his wife was being too reckless. Their conversation ended tensely. They did not know that the entire dialogue had been overheard by Bram. That night, he also had his own plan, to go through the secret tunnel to the abandoned area with teacher Bram. Afterward, they would search for a telescope among the ruins and study what the aliens had built on the moon. At the same time, they would investigate the true purpose of the invasion of Earth. Meanwhile, Gwyn went to the hydroelectric plant and arranged for Bo to leave the place first. After saying goodbye, the two finally went their separate ways. At the same time, Katie's action officially began. She and Eric stormed the subway station. After taking down the guards one by one, they smoothly reached the train line. They installed explosives there as quickly as possible, but since it was their first operation, they miscalculated the amount of explosives, causing the blast to destroy the entire train. The explosion killed all the aliens' guards, and even the chairman who was inspecting the train. Fortunately, this time they discovered the aliens' true appearance hidden under human disguises. They also captured one alien secretly. Because of this incident, the interim government mobilized all key figures. Even Helena personally went to the security headquarters, ready to massacre in the colony. Elsewhere, the rebels took the alien to a secret underground bunker. After confirming it had no tracking devices, they decided to bring it back to their base. When Gwyn returned, wanting to ensure his children's safety, he asked his sister to take them to a secure location. Since his sister had a romantic relationship with Alan, she decided to take the children to the green zone. At this time, Katie went missing, which made Gwyn extremely worried. Under Gwyn's intense questioning, Bram finally produced a note left by his mother before leaving. Gwyn called the number on it, but since they had not returned to the base, no one answered. At this point, Katie and everyone else were in grave danger because all of Los Angeles had been sealed off. The entrance to the green zone became chaotic, and soon the streets were deserted. Fortunately, they quickly stopped a police vehicle, defeated the special forces inside, and successfully seized the car. Meanwhile, due to this mistake, Erlen was about to be removed from his position. Before the city was destroyed, he found his daughter and wanted her to take a pass to start a new life elsewhere. Gwyn's sister had managed to get the children into the green zone at the last moment before the lockdown took effect. However, Bram escaped amid the chaos and disappeared. Afterward, Gwyn went to the subway station. Based on on-site surveillance, he realized there were two culprits this time. Gwyn recognized his wife, but fortunately they were wearing hooded caps, so their faces were not revealed. Meanwhile, Katie's situation was extremely dire. Alarm sirens blared and innocent civilians were mercilessly killed. This was all alien retaliation. They wanted humans to understand the severe consequences of betraying them. After overcoming countless dangers, Katie finally returned to the base to begin studying the aliens. At that moment Gwyn called, but Katie still refused to reveal the situation, only instructing her husband to be careful. After returning to the security bureau, Gwyn asked Jenny to trace the call's location and unexpectedly found it was very close to the bureau. Under Jenny's questioning, Gwyn had to take out the rebels' decoding notebook and reveal the situation regarding his wife. With Jenny's help, they decoded the information in the notebook and discovered clues about the engineers. Meanwhile, Katie and her team also faced difficulties. Due to the aliens' highly advanced technology, they could not penetrate their armor. Everything reached a deadlock during this period. Wanting to save his wife, Gwyn decided to infiltrate the secret base alone. While the rebels were intensely decoding information, Gwyn suddenly appeared and warned them that the government was about to arrive. To ensure the area's safety, the aliens had to be handed over or everyone would die. Seeing that Eric's group still refused to leave, Katie disabled the signal blocking system and forced them to evacuate. The moment the signal was restored, a swarm of drones flooded the sky. Gwyn could not wait any longer and rushed in, finally seeing the aliens' true appearance with his own eyes. Soon after, the armed forces arrived and escorted them away. Thanks to Gwyn's timely intervention, peace was restored to the city. To thank him, Erlen gave him a pass to Santa Monica so he could search for his son. As the helicopter took off, everything returned to calm. After Erlen resigned, he became the new governor of Los Angeles. Meanwhile, Bram had escaped from the Green Zone and, with his teacher, entered the underground tunnel. Unexpectedly, the armed forces had ambushed there, capturing them both on the spot. Gwyn, on the other hand, carried the pass and left the Los Angeles colony area in an orderly manner. The family of 4 from before was now reduced to Katie alone. Instead of calling this a sci-fi movie, it felt more like a thriller. From start to finish, the alien's true appearance was never revealed, especially to the female lead Katie. Clearly, she joined the rebels for the sake of her family. In the end, she ignored their safety and decided to take part in the mission, even disregarding the children's safety. Only the male lead always remembered that they had done everything to find the youngest child. Moreover, although the aliens could govern themselves, they still handed over control to humans throughout the process. Even transportation had to rely on outdated subways, making it hard to comprehend.